do you get when you mix the NBA with the Italian mafia and then add in some poker? Perhaps one of the most explosive gambling scandals the sports world has ever seen. Hello and welcome to USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. Over 30 people have now been indicted, according to U.S. Attorney Joseph Nocella Jr., as part of two investigations known as Operation Royal Flush and Operation Nothing But Net. Beginning as early as 2019, defendants in the case are accused of using wireless cheating technology to run rigged poker games in places like the Hamptons, Miami, Las Vegas, and Manhattan. How did defendants allegedly pull it off? Here to help me unpack a story with many layers is USA Today sports reporter Mark Giannotto. Welcome to The Excerpt, Mark.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Mark, these arrests involve two indictments. I want to start with the rigged poker games. Who was caught up in the arrest? What roles did they play in the scandal?
So with the rigged poker game, in terms of people who are public figures, Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers and an NBA basketball Hall of Famer, won an NBA championship with the Detroit Pistons back in 2004, was the finals MVP that year. He was arrested in Portland at his home and allegedly was part of these rigged poker games, as they called them. The face cards was the I guess lingo they used for these, essentially acting as a celebrity in these games to lure potential victims to play. Essentially, come play with Chauncey Billups, this basketball Hall of Famer, come play poker. So he was arrested as a part of that, and also implicated in it was Damon Jones, a former NBA player, played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, has some ties to LeBron James that we will get into here in a second, but he was also arrested as part of the rigged poker game scheme. And again, he was a quote unquote face card. Essentially, that'd be attractive to a gambler to come play poker next to a former NBA player. Little did they know these NBA players were allegedly in on this scheme of swindling all these poker players out of what the indictment says is hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars in the end.
And then what was the focus of the second indictment here?
So the second indictment, honestly, is probably more problematic for the NBA because of frankly, it cuts at the heart of the integrity of the game. The people implicated in this are, again, Chauncey Billups, although he is not charged in the case, but he is implicated based on, there's a co-conspirator number 8 listed in the indictment whose description fits really neatly with Chauncey Billups, and it involves his team. So he's involved. You've also got Terry Rozier, and this is kind of the one that's drawn headlines in terms of this particular indictment. It's been in the news. It was flagged 2 years ago by gambling entities, but essentially he's accused of faking an injury during a game, pulling himself from the game in order for his unders on a prop bet. And so what he did is he allegedly faked an injury, pulled himself from a game at the end of the first quarter after playing like 9 minutes, and then hit all of his unders because he only ended up with 6 points because he only played 9 minutes. Well, according to the FBI and the Justice Department, in the minutes, hours leading into the game, there were more than $200,000 worth of bets put down on Terry Rozier's under. And so he is essentially accused of rigging a game, rigging a basketball game in some ways, just like the other indictment is rigging a poker game or poker games. So you've got that. Then you've also got Damon Jones, and this is, again, the former NBA player with ties to LeBron James, played with LeBron. He wasn't an official assistant coach in 2022-23, but he was kind of a special assistant for the Lakers who worked with LeBron because he was close with LeBron. Well, it turns out, according to these indictments, Damon Jones, on at least 2 different occasions, was giving out non-public injury information related to LeBron James to these 2 gamblers for a fee. I believe in the indictment it says he received $2,500 for one of these quote unquote tips. But again, kind of cuts at the integrity of the game in terms of he was essentially telling these gamblers LeBron James is not going to play tonight when that information was not public yet. And so it really it's a real problem, I think, for the NBA because they are in bed with these gambling companies. All of our pro sports leagues are now. They've become so sort of ubiquitous with sports now that legalized gambling is so popular. But this is the other side. This is, this is the other side. And I think if you're the NBA, you got to hope this is contained to just these individuals. Frankly, in the indictment, they're unnamed NBA players, but are mentioned in there as whether knowingly or unknowingly participating in this by telling an acquaintance that someone wasn't playing or a certain lineup wasn't playing, things like that. It gets real murky and icky for the NBA here now that this is out there. And the other part of this, I think, that is this second indictment that's interesting. The NBA, technically, according to Terry Rozier's lawyer, cleared him of the fake injury stuff uh, previously. And now the feds are saying, no, 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 we didn't clear him. And here's what happened, or here's what we think happened. And so that's another problem for the NBA. So as you put it at the beginning, a lot of layers to this. And we haven't even gotten into the mafia ties. It's just a
Well,
crazy
okay,
story.
so it really is, and you don't hear about the NBA and the mafia,
Mhm.
in the same sentence very often. What's the connection there?
You don't hear often that the mafia is involved in anything publicly. But in this story, and in this case, according to the indictment, you've got three of the most well-known organized crime families in the country involved: the Bonanno family, the Gambino family, the Genovese family. They're all listed in this indictment as involved in the case, and it's a real problem for everyone involved. According to the indictment, essentially the mafia controls, I guess, some more not necessarily uh rigged poker games, but just your more run-of-the-mill underground poker games in New York. It sounds like this is according to the indictment. And when these rigged poker games started popping up across the country, they got involved, both in organizing the games. This is the mafia. And also, again, according to the indictment, enforcing debt collection, and also um, using obtaining, I guess, the technology needed to pull off the cheating in these rig games. They robbed people, they extorted people, things like that. Those are the allegations in this indictment. So it sounds like that's where the mafia got involved. That's another very uncomfortable part if you're the NBA. But also, it shows you, I guess, how big this potentially could be. The fact that the mafia isn't, you don't hear that, like you put it, you don't hear very often, whether it's the NBA or anything. Usually you don't hear the mafia so publicly tied to something like this. And if I'm someone involved, that's a little scary, but it's also just, it's just not a good look for anyone involved.
Marcus, you've said this could have a huge impact on the league. What is this gonna do to the NBA season?
I guess in the local sense, both Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups have been put on leave from their teams by the NBA. So the Portland Trailblazers now have an interim head coach one game into the season because Chauncey Billups is no longer, or at least for the time being, is not coaching. Terry Rozier, he plays for the Miami Heat now. His deal happened while he was with the Charlotte Hornets a couple years ago, but he's also on leave. So I guess that affects the Heat a little bit. They lose a player, but bigger picture, in terms of the ramifications for the league, there were games after this scandal broke. The season will go on. Where I think it hurts the league is just perception wise. I think with the public, that, like, trust issues. Like, are these games legitimate? I mean, I think, when you see little clips appear on social media, for instance, like in the past few years, as legalized gambling has become more and more popular, you've heard it from the players, you've heard it from the coaches, and you see these little clips during the games where there's, for instance, people on the court side talking to a player while he's playing, like, hey, I got you on the over 20 points. I need you to get going. And players have talked about how aggressive some of these gamblers have gotten, whether in their direct messages or in person at a game, in terms of talking about, hey, like, you screwed me. I lost a bunch of money because you didn't score this many points. And the point I'm making is, I think this has been going on for a minute, and this case, these indictments kind of bring it into the spotlight, bring it into the light. the NBA has been trying to kick this can down the road and shove it under the rug a little bit and say, you know what, it's fine. Like, it's legalized gambling. The the regulators will take care of it. But like, I think this indictment says with flashing lights, like, hey, NBA, you need to address this. I think in terms of the season, it's like the games will keep being played, but this chips away at the integrity of the game. And as this happens more and more, if this happens more and more, I think it could really have a long-term damaging effect on the popularity of the NBA. If you can't trust that what you're watching is real, like that cuts to the core of why we watch sports, why you like sports.
Mark, what was the play here? We know that NBA players make a lot of money. They do very well. So it doesn't seem like it's something that has to do necessarily with making more money. Is it a power play? What are prosecutors saying are the motivations here?
I think that part is a little bit unclear, because, to your point, Terry Rozier a few years ago signed a $96 million contract. Chauncey Billups has basically, since he was drafted in 1997, has basically been being paid like an NBA player or coach for going on 25 years at this point. The 30 years almost at this point. So I don't think I mean, now what we don't know from the indictments, very clearly, whether it's Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, Damon Jones, they were in bed with some serious gamblers here. And in some cases, it appears mafia ties were involved as well. So we don't know yet, like, did Chauncey Billups owe a lot of money? Did Terry Rozier owe a lot of money to these people, and that's why they were doing this? We don't know that yet. That was not in the indictment. Motivations were not in the indictment, because to me, it's either that or it's the other side of, sometimes people don't gamble just for the money; they gamble for the thrill. And so maybe it's that, but it's a lot of money and it's a lot of risk. We can say that for sure.
Mark, U.S. Attorney Nchella mentioned that the alleged perpetrators used, quote, very sophisticated cheating technologies. Of course, this is serious stuff, but this is, looking at these technologies is intriguing. What were they?
Honestly, it almost, when you're reading the indictment, almost seemed like like Ocean's 11 type stuff, in terms of like trying to rig people. So among the things that, I've never seen some of these things, but there was an X-ray table that was mentioned in the indictment that apparently it allows you to an off-site person to be able to essentially see what's on the other side of the card. So a special X-ray table. There were special glasses used, they're infrared glasses that I guess the cards were marked a little bit. And so I saw a video sort of showing an example of this. They're essentially like military grade glasses that you wear, and then a red letter of, like, if it was a king, the card was a king, a red K would show up on the back side of the card when you wear the infrared glasses. And they just look like sunglasses, which a lot of poker players wear during games because they don't want people to read their eyes. And then another intriguing, there was a sort of a self shuffler, sort of a rigged shuffling machine. It was hooked up with some sort of technology that reads the cards, and then there's someone off site that gets the information of, what cards are about to, essentially be handed out. And it's able to tell you basically, generally speaking, what hand each player in the game has. And then that person who was off site was communicating to someone who was on site about, about the hands. And then that person on site was using secret signals to signal to the people in the games. So that's sort of an example of the extent of this. Like, this was not, just strong arming people. This was, like I said, when I read that, when I read the indictment, I go, oh, this is like Ocean's 11. This is like what they would do to swindle someone.
Mark, what's next for these indictments?
Damon Jones, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier were all arraigned on Thursday. There's also, as you mentioned, there's, I believe, 31 other people who were arrested as part of this. I think now the NBA is going to be reopening their investigation as a result of these indictments. I think we're just going to have to see how this moves forward, because an indictment ultimately is not. There's a presumption of innocence still. So my gut tells me there's going to be more details that come out. The investigators emphasized on Thursday this is an ongoing investigation, and frankly, now that there've been arrests, we see this time and time again, especially in cases involving the mafia. There might be some more people who turn in order to save themselves and reveal some more details about the scheme. Because now, like I said, there's 34 people who were put in custody and now facing charges. My guess is not all of them will face those charges, and we'll learn some more details as this progresses. But now it's in the court system, so that's how we move forward.
So there's still so much to unwrap here, Mark, but thank you so much for being on The Excerpt.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.